This is not what Jesus had in mind. Be kind to one another. That's it. If we followed that simple admonition, the world would be at peace. Unfortunately, tribal thinking seems to be too deep within us. We want to apply this admonition only to those with whom we perceive commonality. Those who are different, let them die. And often, we're very willing to help them on their way. Jesus did not admonish us to praise him. What possible use could he have for our adoration? For that matter, what possible use could he have for our thanks? We may have kicked that horse enough. When we set aside time on Saturday or Sunday or every day to give him thanks and praise, we are distracting ourselves from his simple wish. Look at the theatrical spectacle we've made of our attempts to emulate this wonderful, simple man. Costumes, lights, musical extravaganzas on a scale that could only be fully appreciated by the likes of Cecil B. DeMille or Busby Berkeley. Entertainment's more appropriate to the hippodrome than to anything in the realms of the spirit. We have so encrusted Jesus with gold and religious artifice, I feel certain he would not recognize himself. He'd have to be a god to bear up under the weight of it all. God on high, hear my prayer. The gospel writers use the resources that they found at hand to powerful effect. They spread the words of Jesus to the far corners of the known world, and they each wrote their own patent. And with a marketing paradigm not unlike Amway, even though they could not come to agreement on the exact sequence of events, they established a product brand, Christianity. But already, even in the hands of the first pope, Jesus was no longer in it. The books to which all of those men contributed were doomed to failure the moment they set pen to papyrus. Jesus represents an idea that is so big and so simple, its expression defies the printed word. Jesus didn't teach only by his word, he taught by action. He led by the example of his living. I do not understand the excessive focus placed upon the horrifying circumstances of his death. The problem, as I see it, Christians don't follow Christ. They don't emulate Jesus. The provenance stops one step short of Jesus. The mantle, the legacy that Francis has so recently taken from Benedict is the Church of St. Peter. Remember Peter. 3 years of close living proximity to Jesus, yet he denied knowing the man. In the wee hours of the very day of Jesus' crucifixion, Peter drew his sword and cut off the ear of a soldier sent to bring Jesus to Pilate. Peter was a deeply flawed individual, and he was the best prospect at hand. Jesus needed a leader to carry on his vision of how things could be, but he had only followers available to him. Peter was the most forceful of the 12. I'm finding it very difficult to reconcile that un-Jesus-like trait as being a selling point in favor of the choice of Peter as the cornerstone of a bid for world peace. Peter was at best the most leader-like of the followers. It appears for some years after Jesus' crucifixion, the 12 went about living the life Jesus had demonstrated. They spread out a bit and preached to others of a new way of living, not dependent upon documents written by men as much as 600 or 700 years previous. Though it had been written as law, we no longer felt required to stone a prostitute or a philanderer. They could be forgiven their weaknesses, and we could move on without committing a murder of our own. Jesus had demonstrated this new way of living, guided not by the printed word, but by a survival instinct that does not allow for the unnecessary taking of a life. Not kill or be killed, but live and let live. Not them and us, but simply all of us. Humanity. Catholic. The very word carries an inherent feeling of aggression. It means worldwide or universal, as if it dominates all other expressions of faith. A very un-Christ-like word, speaking of domination. Catholic is another layer of religious artifice applied by latecomers to support the pretense that this is the one true faith, and all of the others are the pretenders. Catholic demands respect without deserving it. It demands respect the way a hoodlum will demand respect. Respect on the hoodlum's terms. Respect me or I'll kill you. Fear God. Again, St. Peter. A departure. I'm the one who left. I had done the math. It is said reconciliation is much more difficult for those left behind. They have yet to do the math. And the departure of a loved one is traumatic enough to cloud the brain and make the math more difficult to accomplish. The cloudiness and confusion may have the effect of causing the adherents to cling with greater tenacity to things which, though hurtful, are familiar. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. When Jesus departed from the 12, he had shown them all he could about a more reasonable way of walking the earth. He had followed Judaic law, except where it pertained to stoning. They don't follow Jesus, they follow the followers of Jesus, the followers who were ill-equipped to lead in any way. Oh, they tried to spread his words. They tried very hard, after having locked themselves in an upper room for fear of meeting the same fate as their master. They initially tried to lead by the example of their lives, but they found themselves to be unworthy, and that is what they have passed on to subsequent generations. Jesus had demonstrated the worthiness of all. That mocking humility, often feigned by Methodists and Presbyterians, yes, and Catholics and Baptists and Episcopalians too, is yet another behavior adopted by those who followed the followers. You'll never walk alone. One of the clearest indicators of character is the way one behaves when alone. Religion doesn't allow for this circumstance. God and Santa Claus are on watch 24/7. If I can do it, you can do it. This was in a television commercial. The statement strikes me as presumptuous in the extreme. This fellow had no idea who might be on the receiving end of his message. It sounds encouraging. even optimistic. Yet for many who may hear this doggerel, it is simply false. And for some, it is also cruel. Be kind to one another. That's it. If we followed that one simple admonition, the world would be at peace.